Sent from Disneyland, history in our hand. So much to say about yesterday and the decades we have spanned. Postcards from the park, this journey will embark. See what has changed and what remains on Sent from Disneyland. Sent from Disneyland.
Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this podcast, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland, Disneyland history, and more, with mementos, snapshots, souvenirs, and postcards sent from Disneyland, from 1955 to the present. Let's start by thanking my patrons from patreon.com. You can join in at any level to support the show and receive snail mail from my trips to Disneyland and from my desk, plus some sneak peeks and bonus content. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the rest of the e-ticket patrons, Tania, Eric Daniels, Monica Seitz Vega, Scott Cagle, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Angela Reynolds, Grace Coate, Patty Wolin, and Ben and Noel Bruning. B-ticket patron Joshua Bell, and to the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Alexis Robles, Angel DeBlock, and the Beyond the Railroad podcast. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has the fire engine, loaded with guests on Main Street. Behind them, you can see the Emporium, and to the right is one of the original Disneyland mailboxes. On the back it reads, Motorized Fire Truck. Disneyland's Fire Department Engine Number 1 leaves the town square on Main Street to take guests on a trip to the plaza. It's postmarked January 2nd, 1962, with a Fresno cancel and a 3-cent purple Liberty postage stamp, Scott number 1035. I assume they visited the park on Thursday, December 28th, 1961, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. The weather was a high of 67 and a low of 39. Park attendance that day was 35,227. It's addressed to Mrs. P. A. Travis of Grand Rapids, Michigan. It reads, Friday. Dear Ha, if you've never seen Disneyland, you haven't missed much. It's just a good big carnival. We are riding along the great blue Pacific at 72 degrees. We are on our way to San Jose. Doubt we'll make it tonight, but maybe we'll see you in a couple weeks. Love, John and Melba. Though I personally disagree with this postcard, and feel Disneyland is more than just a good big carnival, I chose it because of a certain feature on the front of the postcard. It is one of the only postcards made for the park that includes a Disneyland mailbox. And although this episode marks 5 years of the podcast, I've not talked about the history of Disneyland mailboxes. I've spent a lot of time tracking down where postboxes have been in the park, and where they are currently, or where they were in the past. The most exhaustive lists that I've found are in the Birnbaum Guides to Disneyland from 1989 and 1992. Mailboxes have been in Disneyland from opening day. Today's episode will go through land by land where mailboxes and postage stamp services have existed in the parks. Starting with Adventureland, the only mailbox that I've seen and is listed in the 89 guide is still located next to the Adventureland Bazaar, across from the Jungle Cruise. The green square mailbox has a similar look to the one that's on the front of this postcard, and the original mailboxes of Disneyland. Moving on to Frontierland, there have been a few mailboxes scattered around the area. 2 of my favorite from looking through the Daveland web photos include one in front of what is now the Westward Ho Trading Company, and one attached to the exterior of the Frontierland station, which has now been moved to the other side of the tracks. One mailbox that has been in Frontierland the longest is still in the same location, currently underneath the Halloween tree next to the Frontierland Mercantile and across from Rancho del Zocalo. The other 2, which are also currently in Frontierland, are next to the Leather Shop and the exterior of the Golden Horseshoe next to the Stage Door Cafe. From everything that I've seen, New Orleans Square, Toontown, and Galaxy's Edge have never had a Disneyland mailbox. Bear Country, which became Critter Country, has had mailboxes located near Teddy Barra's Swinging Arcade and outside what was the Briar Patch. We'll see when Bayou Country opens in a few months if these 2 mailboxes remain. Fantasyland has only had 2 mailboxes. One was located near the Matterhorn and the Storybookland canal boats. Based on information and a photo I have of the mailbox, it moved from side to side of the walkway towards It's a Small World. The other mailbox was located outside of Merlin's Magic Shop from the early days of the park until recently when it was removed after the recent refurbishment. Add some flair to your mail by checking out stamps at Enfield Post. You can explore different stamp options on our Etsy site, grab some great deals by following the EP Sunday Sales on Instagram, or create something special and have her design a stamp array for your invitation or celebration. You can head over to enfieldpost.com and explore all the different vintage postage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST on Instagram and enfieldpost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has Town Square. You can see the Emporium, City Hall, and a few Main Street vehicles like the red horseless carriage, the yellow horseless carriage, the horse-drawn streetcar, and the omnibus. If you look closely, you can see Goofy and Pluto waving at guests driving by, and what looks like a guest putting mail into one of the Main Street mailboxes. On the back it reads, Town Square, Main Street. Main Street Town Square represents the typical small town in the early 1900s, where the gas lamp is gradually being replaced by electricity. The plodding, horse-drawn streetcar is giving way to the chugging horseless carriage. It's postmarked December 27, 1968, with an Anaheim cancel, and a 5-cent blue George Washington postage stamp, Scott number 1283. I assume they visited the park on Wednesday, December 25, 1968, when park hours were from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The weather was a high of 59 and a low of 44, with 0.65 inches of precipitation. It's addressed to Mr. and Mrs. J. L. Corey of Bandon, Oregon. It reads, We had a nice flight down, though we couldn't see much through the clouds. Today, Christmas Day, we spent all day at Disneyland in the rain. At least we didn't have to fight any lines of people. The kids are having a ball. Corey bought a cute watch with her Christmas money. Cal liked the Matterhorn ride best. Looking at Tomorrowland, there were 2 mailboxes in the late 80s, early 90s. One near the Star Trader, and the other at the Tomorrowland Terrace. Currently, there is only one blue mailbox, located near the Tomorrowland bathrooms. This is the only blue mailbox, and has a different design from all the other mailboxes around the park. Next, I'm going to break up Main Street into 4 sections: the Hub, Main Street, Town Square, and the Main Street entrance. Starting at the Hub, we just have 2 mailboxes on either side, which were added around 1956. Each mailbox is to the right and left of the partner statue, although they may have moved to the right and left side of the walkway, but they're still there today. Moving down Main Street, there has been consistently 3 mailboxes, one near the current holiday shop, one in front of Disney Clothiers Limited, and one in front of the Emporium. I noticed looking at photos of the mailboxes that they were painted gold along with a lamppost during the 50th anniversary celebration. Town Square has also had 2 mailboxes since around 1956 or 1957, one in front of the Opera House and the other attached to one of the 2 lampposts near City Hall. Finally, there have been 3 mailboxes just inside the gate of Disneyland, 2 next to each tunnel on either side of the Floral Mickey in front of the Main Street Railroad Station, and one near the newsstand and exit of Disneyland. The last one has been both inside and outside of the park, based on information from the Birnbaum guides. Most of the Main Street mailboxes were replaced from the original rectangular mailboxes by the current rounded-top mailboxes sometime after 1985. These mailboxes might have been used in the 1950s, but not at Disneyland. Postage stamps have been available at the newsstands, the ticket booths, and the park entrance souvenir stands on either side of Main Street. 2 postage stamp machines were available, one at the Camera Center on Main Street and one at the Premier Shop in Tomorrowland. Looking through Disneyland maps, from the 1956 map through the 1980 map, most list postage stamps and mail services in the general information area, reading, Stamps are available in vending machines located in each land, and at the Hallmark Communication Center on Main Street. Mailboxes for your letters and cards are located throughout Disneyland with regular pickup for mailing out of the United States Post Office in Anaheim. There is no United States Post Office within Disneyland. After 1980, the information about mail services were removed from the maps. Although, looking at a 1981 German edition of the Disneyland map, there is a section about postal services and includes the postage rates for sending outside of the U.S. and 2 specific countries. The front of my incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is a craft hour on Instagram starting at 9 p.m. Eastern or 6 Pacific. Art Throwdown is a wonderful community of artists who love to share their craft, from creating sticker postcards and coloring techniques to intricate paper cutting and unique crafting. It's always a treat to watch a show and occasionally get some one-of-a-kind postcards from the group. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard has Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh standing on a stump with a sign attached reading Exhibit A, which is misspelled. It's postmarked August 13th, 2024, with a Santa Ana cancel and a Grambled Roof Barn in Summer Forever postcard postage stamp, Scott number 5550. It reads, Clocky, we are here at Disneyland for their first ever D23 day. It's a zoo here. Looking forward to the expo this weekend. Hope to see you soon for a drink. Scott, 8/8/24. Thank you so much for the postcard, Scott. The D23 day did look like a zoo, although most of the D23 Ultimate Fan event looked pretty chaotic. While preparing this episode, I thought a lot about friends of the podcast, Instagram followers, and TikTokers who I've been able to connect with and have supported the podcast in different ways. So I'm taking time to shout out friends like @Kayla May, @ScottBooker 46268, @JamalFox, @GroovyGhostVintage, @235Trash, and @HappiestNurse on Earth. These are just 6 of the many people who have helped the podcast in different ways, some by finding vintage items for the show, or some just sending great postcards for the incoming segment of this show. I'm going to start shouting out more friends at the end of each episode, hopefully creating a bigger community of vintage Disneyland-loving snail mail enthusiasts. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment on whatever podcast platform you use. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/sentfromdisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at sentfromdisneyland or my website, sentfromdisneyland.com. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent from Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney-related properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to the host and guests of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. This podcast is produced and edited by Clocky McDowell, website designed by Misty McDowell, theme song was written and performed by Noah Sunday Lefkowitz. Take it away, Noah.